Good afternoon, everyone. It is so nice to be here on this beautiful Saturday afternoon, apparently before it's going to be not so beautiful starting tomorrow. So thank you all for joining us today. Thank you to all of the readers who were cycling through the green room and helping us make sure that the show runs smoothly today. We're looking forward to hearing from all of you. My name is Claire. I'm the event coordinator at Village Books. And if anybody's experiencing any sound issues, I would suggest that you put some headphones on or turn the volume of your computer down. You actually also might try just exiting and coming back if you're experiencing any sound issues with Crowdcast. I want to thank those of you who contributed to our event programming at registration with a monetary contribution. That's very helpful for our event programming during this trying time. And to those of you who went ahead and purchased the book at registration, thank you so much for supporting the authors that are here today and for supporting an independent bookstore. We so appreciate it. And don't forget, if you didn't buy it yet, you of course always have an opportunity to buy it, and you can just click on that green button center screen, and that will take you straight to the Village Books website where you can purchase copies of today's book. So we have three special events that are coming up, and that's more than I usually announce, but you know, this is our local writing community, and the three events coming up are they are local writers. And so tomorrow, if there's anyone in the audience who has children in their lives, Barbara Davis Piles is going to be doing a virtual launch of her third children's book, Cliff the Failed Troll. She and the illustrator of this book, Justin Hillgrove, are going to be in the virtual readings gallery tomorrow at 4 o'clock. If you go to villagebooks.com, you can find out how to get connected to that event. That's at 4 o'clock tomorrow, Sunday, the 24th. And then, of course, on Monday night, we have our monthly open mic with Seán Dwyer, and we are bringing back the Spanish open mic. So any Spanish speakers, we are going to do the 6 p.m. Spanish open mic, and then the 7 p.m. our regular monthly open mic. So if you go to villagebooks.com again, you can see how you can register for that, and you do need to contact Seán to sign up to be a reader for that. And then on Wednesday, we have another Bellingham local author, Barty Kirshner, is going to be in the readings gallery. She's going to be presenting Murder at Andaman. I may not be saying that right. I'm not sure. Apologies, Barty. That is going to be at 6 p.m. on Wednesday. You can find out information on how to access that event also at villagebooks.com. We're very excited for Barty's event. Okay. We are going to keep the chat enabled. We will be monitoring that. So if you want to chime in, ask any questions, please feel free to do that. One really easy way for us to get to all your questions is if you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see it says Ask a Question. If you click on that, you can type in any question that you have. We'll hold them there, and then when we get to the Q&A period, we can check that out. And that way, sometimes with the chat, questions have a way of cycling up and sort of disappearing. So I encourage you all to use the Ask a Question feature. All right, let's see. I think that's enough for announcements. Now I'd like to introduce our MC for the afternoon. Cami Ostman, founder of the Narrative Project, has published a memoir, Second Wind, One Woman's Midlife Quest to Run 7 Marathons on 7 Continents, and has co-edited several anthologies, including Beyond Belief, The Secret Lives of Women in Extreme Religions, and True Stories, Volumes 1, 2, and 3. She's been profiled in Fitness Magazine, and her books have been reviewed in O Magazine, The Atlantic, and The Washington Post. She's here today to introduce our readers as we hear selections from this book right here, True Stories, Volume 3. So that's it for me. Welcome, Cami.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you so much. And thank you to Village Books. And welcome everybody who's watching on Crowdcast today. And this afternoon, I and the Story Warriors, that is to say the coaches in the Narrative Project who also function as editors for this volume, that we're presenting today, would like to thank you for joining us for this launch of Narrative Project's anthology, True Stories, Volume 3. And we really appreciate partnering with Village Books and want to remind everyone right now during these trying times to be supporting your local independent bookstores. And whenever you need a book to purchase from them, they will mail it to you most likely. So please make sure that we're supporting our local businesses. We want to start by saying that a lot of us feel that they have a story inside of them. In fact, Maya Angelou said there's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you. When I wrote my first book, Second Wind, I found the writing of that story was tremendously transformative experience for me. Everyone who has a story to tell burning in their hearts, I believe, should get an opportunity to experience that kind of transformational experience. The Narrative Project offers would-be authors the chance to conceive of, write, revise, and now publish their stories. And in the process, experience that transformation from one who dreams about writing a book to one who writes a book. I am incredibly proud to say that 100% of our authors who've been through our 9-month Get Your Book Done programs are now published authors. My co-editors on this volume, Rebecca Mabanglo-Mayor, Annaliese Kamola, Wendy Welch, Nancy Canyon, and Colleen Haggerty, along with our publisher, Lisa Dailey at Sidekick Press, and I rolled up our sleeves with the authors published in this anthology, and I'm thrilled to say that this right here, it's good writing. So before we get started in listening to the authors read from this volume, I want to acknowledge the hard work these writers put in. A book is not simply written by a person sitting alone in a room with a cigarette dangling from her mouth, even though that's how we used to think of authors. You don't smoke, right? A book requires a critique group, an editor, accountability partners, lots of reading from other people's work, patience, meltdowns, and then some more patience. So to the writers of the Narrative Project, who now number over 50, if you can believe that, some of you have completed your whole books and some of you are still in progress, but wherever you are in your journey, you should be proud of yourselves for taking a stand for the stories that live inside of you. I'm incredibly proud of you. So here we go. Our first reader. Our first reader is Diane Wood. Diane Wood wrote in her high school yearbook, "Now I'm going out into the world to have all kinds of exciting experiences. When I'm old, I shall write about them." She's had the experiences, and now she's writing about them. Wood's memoir, Vital Signs, A Mother, a Daughter, and Deathbed Secrets, is her favorite. Scars is an excerpt from Diane Wood's forthcoming memoir. Here's Diane.
Well, you just said it, but this is an excerpt from my memoir, Vital Signs, A Mother, a Daughter, and Deathbed Secrets. "Damn it, Mom," I said, dropping the phone onto the receiver. My mother's health condition was beginning to scare me. I hated this, especially now that I was finally cutting the cord with her. I decided it was time to contact that Malaya woman I'd met a couple weeks ago. I called her and she invited me to meet her in her home office. I walked up the stone steps to the hammered copper door of her house. As I lifted the heavy crescent moon knocker, the door opened. "Welcome," an ebullient Malaya wrapped her ample arms around me, drawing me into her space. Her large, dark-skinned body and wild silver hair gave her an ethereal quality. "Come with me." I followed her as she sashayed down the hallway into a sunroom. When we were seated, she spoke first. "Since we talked that night, I've gotten visions of your mother as a girl child, and I experience a tingling numbness in my hands and heat." She stretched her arms across the table, face up. "Feel." I held my hands a couple inches above her long, light-colored palms. It felt as if I were holding them over a smoldering campfire. "What does that mean?" I quickly pulled my hands back. "Well, let's see." Malaya closed her eyes, inhaling and exhaling slowly. she said repeatedly. On the first night we had met, I'd been packing things up after having catered a wedding reception when this larger-than-life woman filled the kitchen doorway. Her voice flowed out as smooth as caramel. I've been told to talk to you. Sure, what can I do for you? I was tired and so not interested in talking to anyone. My business cards are over there. If you'll call me tomorrow, we can talk then. Nope. This pushy woman walked into my comfort zone. I have a message for you from someone who calls you Peanut. The hair stood up on the back of my neck. I stopped what I was doing, pivoted, and stared into her large ebony eyes. What are you talking about? We really do need to talk, she said. I'll go say my goodbyes to the family while you finish up here. I'll meet you outside. As we were sitting out in my car, she told me she'd been meditating one afternoon and heard a man's voice say, "Tell Peanut to keep an eye on Janie." She said, when I asked my guides to clarify, they showed me my nephew's wedding and said I would find Peanut in the kitchen. Malaya went on to explain, those who have crossed over often have undelivered messages, and they need someone from this side to help deliver them. So that's where I come in. I'm your messenger.
Thank you, Diane. Fantastic. I wish that you could all feel our applause. Great. Our next reader is Mila Webb. Mila Webb is a former Texan and current resident of Washington State, a writer of poetry, fiction, and now collage memoir. Her poetry has appeared in Spectral Realms, and her fiction has been published in Latchkey Tales, Desert Daughter. Desert Daughter is an excerpt from her work in progress, All These Things Are True. Welcome, Mila.
Thank you, Cami. This is an excerpt from Desert Daughter. It's called Trains. Staying at Grandmommy and Grandpa's house was a special treat when I was little. We ate fried chicken and Hershey's chocolate bars and waved at the trains that traveled past the back of the house. Sometimes a man sat at the door of the caboose with its little railing, waved back to us. But Grandpa died when I was 9, and after that, spending the night with Grandmommy was every Saturday night. The house was quiet without Grandpa there, and I missed his hugs and gentle nature and the smell of his pipe. But the trains still ran past the house, and I read the books and played with the toys that Grandmommy kept there for me. In the morning, she and I made the beds. We threw the feather pillows back and forth to each other until they were fat and round, a silly game that made both of us laugh. Then we went to church with Great Aunt Maggie and Great Uncle Lowell, and after that we had Sunday dinner with my parents. I'm in high school now, but I still spend nearly every Saturday night with Grandmommy. She's encouraged me to stay at my own house so I can see my friends, and once in a while I do, but it's rarely worth the argument I'd probably have with my parents. I admit I'm a little tired of packing a suitcase and trying not to forget anything I'll need in the morning. And I feel like I have to be careful what I talk about because Grandmommy's religious and wouldn't like that I'd rather go out dancing than go to church. But we won't fight, and I won't have to feel self-conscious that I might be doing things wrong. Grandmommy and I still go to church and Sunday family dinner, but now I drive us in the blue 1972 Mercury that belonged to Grandpa before he died. I'm not allowed to drive on the freeway. I don't know how my dad would know if I did, but I wouldn't put it past him to check the odometer and somehow figure it out. So I take the long way past the strip shopping centers and through the residential streets. I sleep in a different bedroom now, and I make the bed by myself in the morning. There isn't room here for us to toss the pillows back and forth, and I think Grandmommy's arthritis might keep her from doing so anyway. We eat dinner and breakfast in the back room with the windows that look out into the yard, with its peach tree and tomato plants, and then across the dirt alley to the dip where the trains run through. You can see through the wire fence as though it weren't there, to the scrub plants and the mesquite tree that one year was hung with glistening icicles after a freak winter storm, the kind that happens so rarely in El Paso. One of the peach trees is dead, and the grass has been worn away by Grandmommy's dog, Missy. Missy also bites the ripe tomatoes in half before anyone can pick them. But she's good company for Grandmommy, and I love her too. The trains are longer every year, with twice as many boxcars as they used to have. It feels like it takes forever for them to pass. Grandmommy and I sit at the table with our elbows on the red and white checked oilcloth, and we watch the trains roll by and shout at each other over the noise until they're gone. hauling their cargo wherever they're asked to go, barreling into the distance like a dream you forget as soon as you wake up.
Oh, lovely. Thank you so much, Mila. Gorgeous. Beautiful reading. Our next reader is Kathy Wagner. Kathy Wagner is a Canadian addictions support advocate who writes about family, grief, hope, addiction, recovery, and finding joy. She's honed her writing skills through the Narrative Project and the Banff Writers Retreat and has multiple pieces published in the Globe and Mail. You can read more from Kathy at kwagnerwrites.com or follow her on Instagram at kwagner_writes. Welcome, Kathy.
Thanks, Cami. I have retitled this particular excerpt, A Mother's Recovery. I came to my own recovery sideways and unaware. I was simply following my son as I always had, hovering behind him, ready to catch him when he fell. Toddler and teen Tristan was pure energy and adrenaline, running full tilt at life, until he smacked into a wall. As a teen, that wall was addiction. And despite my hovering, Tristan had fallen hard. So here I was, at my first parents group meeting, at his first rehab center. With 2 minutes to spare, I walked into the multi-purpose room and sat in the first chair I saw. I smiled at whoever looked my way to be friendly, then avoided further contact by pretending I had urgent messages on my phone. But the people I had glimpsed surprised me. They were mostly women, mostly middle-aged, in that regard, like me. But these women had bright eyes, breezy scarves, broad smiles. They were laughing. They didn't seem like mothers of addicts to me. They didn't seem like me at all. I listened as the facilitator told the story of his own addiction, of being a punk teenager with a chip on his shoulder, until his parents locked him out with nothing but his favorite Snoopy blanket. That's when he decided to get help, 26 years ago. I listened to moms talk about their sons celebrating sobriety, moving out of rehab with roommates, buying a car, paying off debts. I began to relax, to feel the smallest kernel of hope for Tristan. And then a woman mentioned she just got back from a few days of radical self-care, focusing on her own health and well-being, even though her son had recently relapsed. Relapsed. That word screamed through my bones and I couldn't hear what came next. I wasn't stupid. I knew about relapse, but fear blurred my vision and I started to panic. Jesus fucking Christ, I thought. Tristan can't relapse. I would rather die than live through his addiction again. Those thoughts didn't feel dramatic to me. They weren't an overreaction or exaggeration. They came from a place of deep, deep exhaustion. My faith in recovery wavered as this woman talked about joy and gratitude, about hiking and spending time with her husband, despite everything, despite relapse. I didn't recognize what I was seeing then, a mother's recovery. At that time, recovery wasn't a concept I applied to parents. Recovery was for our kids. And a kid in relapse was worth screaming about and grieving and shrieking and tearing yourself apart. How could this woman enjoy herself when she should have been chasing her son down and tying him up if she had to? And if that wasn't possible, at least she could be in deep despair. After that first night, I didn't think I'd get anything from parents group. I didn't understand then that family recovery meant helping each family member to heal themselves, not each other. And I certainly didn't know that 6 months later, after really getting to know myself, I'd walk into that room wearing a broad smile and breezy scarf, laughing with friends, to share my gratitude for the joy-filled weekend I just spent with my granddaughter, despite my son's relapse.
Wow, Kathy, thank you so much. That was really beautiful. Well done. Oh, our next reader, Erin Palmer. Erin C. Palmer writes edgy, cross-genre, long and short-form fiction and screenplays filled with gripping scenes and lively characters. He finds inspiration from family and hiking the rugged Pacific Northwest trails with his squirrel crazy pup. Quest of the Buckwheaters is an excerpt from Erin's forthcoming novel, Frontier Sugar. Here's Erin.
The men rode up through a narrow serpentine rise of slip rock on the edge of a steep precipice. The horse's nickered in complaint, and the donkey, who'd been acting like the lead horse, made no forward progress. "Come on, Nico," Chaps coaxed. "Brutto figlio di puttana bastardo." Al shook his head at Chaps. "He does this at least once an hour when I plow the vineyard. We will walk this section." "How about our friend here?" "Him too, and he's not our friend." Al gritted his teeth. The lads dismounted, and Chaps went over to Nico and untied the payload. Chaps slipped off the donkey and fell on his behind, ejecting metamorphic fragments over the escarpment. "God almighty, that smarts." He looked up the barrel of Chaps' shotgun. "You get on up and get moving," ordered Chaps. "Stay between me and Al. I don't want to have to shoot you, but I will." Horton saw an opening. "I wouldn't be your first, eh?" Chaps bristled. "You better just concern yourself with what happens to you, mister." "You don't like killing, do you? Chaps, is it?" Chaps gestured him to move on with the barrel. "I didn't. It was self. Remember what the sheriff said," Al boomed. "I know. He's a Sharpie," Chaps said with an edge. "Then don't talk to the damn palooka." I'm a family man," Doc interjected. "Good for you," Al said with heavy sarcasm. "Boys or girls?" Chaps asked. "I've got one of each, Chaps. They're my pride and joy. It's the only reason I'm out on the road. I'm just trying to provide for them the best I can." "Jesu Christo, can't you see he's trying to goad you into sympathy?" Al spat. The path veered away from the hillside opening onto a meadow accented with wildflowers of periwinkle and butterscotch. The equines fed on the grasses. The dudes took out their knapsacks and began to eat their sandwiches. Chaps handed Doc half of his and sat on a rocky outcropping. Al leaned against a blue oak and ate while keeping an eye on Doc Horton the entire time. Chaps pointed up the trail. "The top of the ridge, you can see the Pacific coastline on a clear day." "You don't say," Doc enthused. Al shook his head at them. "How much is Doc paying you to be his tour guide?" Chaps' face turned red. After finishing his sandwich, Al went over to Chaps and passed him a bottle. He spoke in a low voice. "The shaft is just a mile north from where the trail splits at the top of the range. We could be back home before sundown." Chaps took a slug, scowled at Al. Then he glanced over at the prisoner enjoying his sandwich. "He's got a family depending on him." "You don't know that, cowboy. The sheriff said we could do what we want, as long as he never sees the scoundrel again. Dropping him headfirst down the mine shaft, we're sure he ain't coming back."
Oh, now you want to know what happens. Thank you so much, Aaron. Well done. That was great. I just want to remind everyone that if you have questions, that you can pop those in the question box. And then also, if you want to purchase the volume, there's a purchase button right below the visual, whoever's up there on the screen. Great. Our next reader is Rebecca Mabanglo-Mayor. Rebecca's nonfiction, poetry, and short fiction have appeared in print and online in several journals and anthologies. She's also the co-editor of True Stories, The Narrative Project, volumes 1, 2, and 3. She's been with us for all 3 volumes. And her poetry and essays have been collected in her book, Dancing Between Bamboo Poles. Rebecca.
Thank you, Cami. It's great to be here. This piece is called, or an excerpt from Never Heard. There were no stories to prepare me for being a girl of color growing up to be a woman of color. So it was easier for me to imagine myself to be like the people I saw every day, not just the students in my math and sciences classes, but the people on TV and movies. I could be a captain on a starship, wield a lightsaber, meet aliens with rainbow suspenders. Their stories overwrote my experiences because I had no language to describe being that straight-A, piano-playing, suburban Filipino-American who remained invisible on the fringe. And when I ask myself why I write, and I think about how the girl who fell from the sky became part of a new community that physically resembled her very little, I realize I'm trying to describe what it's like to be a human riding on the back of a turtle, living in the company of old toad, clever rat, and bright-eyed kingfisher. I'd like the ability to dive deep, to be bold, to have precise will, but I'm just a girl who fell in love with stories but forgot my own. So I write to remember myself, to tell me the one story no one else can tell. There's a story I have never heard as a child, but one I've told my children and the children of my audiences for the past decade. It's the story of the girl who fell from the hole in the sky, and sometimes we don't know why she fell, only that she's falling. In the story, there's ducks or sometimes a helpful flock of birds to ease her passage into the new world, chattering, fluffy midwives of change who find the wisdom of the sea to solve the problem of this human on the earth. It's usually grandmother turtle who gathers the people together to spread the mud on grandmother's back and make a place for the girl to live and raise her family. And I think that's why I write. I'm making an island for people who've fallen, who've found themselves falling for whatever reason, oppression, addiction, disappointment, disability, so they'll know they're not alone, that they can survive the trauma of their past and make sense of themselves. If they're not alone, then neither am I, and we can build doorways to fantastic worlds and look at each other and say, wow, that was cool. Let's do it again. Because you see, that turtle isn't floating in space. She's standing on another turtle who's standing on another turtle, and you could say that it's turtles all the way down. But that's a different story.
Nice. Wow. Rebecca, I'm totally in love with that. How you did the revision to make it concise. That was really cool. Thank you. Yeah, and that reminds me to tell everybody that these are just little excerpts out of the pieces in here. Rebecca tells the whole tale in True Stories Volume 3. But that was a very cool revision. Thank you. Our next reader is Christina Kemp. Christina has been a lover of writing since her early years and continues her dedication to the written word in her home in the Pacific Northwest. Christina is a psychology professor, writer, counselor, and re-emerging dancer living on Bainbridge Island. Christina. And friend.
And Lucy. Yes, thank you. This is an excerpt from Adirondack Chairs. I wonder now how I got along so far without this, I said, as I motioned my head to the leaves blowing gently in the wind outside the open doors of the restaurant. We spoke about the workings of the inner life and how the earth meets us in places beneath conscious thought. The way rich minerals absorb through the skin, rejuvenating dusty corners of the soul, replenishing what has been seeping out through the years. Later in the afternoon, a breeze off the island shore swept in and moved through the country grass, tickling strands of hair into our eyes as we sat in a pasture leaning back, our fingers barely touching, our minds out of the thoughts of clouds. I'll always remember the way you carried me many years ago, the day the news of my cancer came. The many allowances you gave me through the moments that followed, clumsy, fragmented, and lacking grace. You were gentle and supporting, trying and uncertain, not always knowing what to say, but still you stayed. I remembered that while we walked our last afternoon together through the cool under canopy of forest. Images of that summer long ago danced before me as the waving leaves played timelessly, the way you stood and walked with me and walk and stand with me still. This is what we get when we remain together through the moments that bend our spirits, but where we may find life rich and full of meaning all the same. We become familiar. Bare feet step across the floor and someone sighs some soft undertone of feeling from another room, and that feeling of home comes back to greet us. Today, as I stand at my window, wind chimes are singing from my neighbor's house as the breeze gently caresses itself through the tall, stretching trees on surrounding acres. The swaying, long and together, offers sounds I have not yet heard. Maybe it's only in the eternal that we find our way back to each other with a permanence craved by the spirit. Here, we come so close and then are stretched further apart. You're on the ferry now, making your way back to the city with friends and family to see. My chest aches with that eternal remembering of what will never leave, but which is now out of reach for this moment. There's a presence of your absence, all of your absences. You who I love, but I'm apart from for a time.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you so much. And congratulations on your first publication. Yeah, that's wonderful. Special congratulations to everybody for whom this is their first publication. Our next reader is Annaliese Kamola. Annaliese Kamola is an author, developmental editor, and narrative project coach living in Bellingham, Washington. Her memoir is forthcoming. She is co-editor of the narrative projects True Stories, Volumes 2 and 3. Annaliese writes on themes of the body, family history, and what makes us human. Check out her blog at annaliesekamola.com. Ani.
Thanks, Cami. This is a piece called Something to Remember Me By. Hey, Dad, you just caught me. I was on my way out, I said into my flip phone, closing the front door again. I felt pretty in my black party dress and cowboy boots. I walked to the picture window, my boots tap, tap, tapping on the wooden floor. The evening sun painted a tangerine sky over the bay. What's up? I set the bottle of Jack Daniels on the table beside me. It's about your Oma, my dad said. My Oma was a no-nonsense kind of grandma. She carried her Austrian heritage with her, even in Sugarland, Texas, where she had lived for 10 years with my aunt and uncle. Oma wore pearl necklaces, clip-on gold earrings, and bright pink lipstick. I had visited her recently, and at 101, she still seemed regal, even when lying on the daybed on the porch, watching the glittering leaves of the pecan tree. Annaliese, she had called to me. I had sat down next to her, and she took my hand. I want to buy you something to remember me by. Perhaps something special from Texas? She had never mentioned her mortality to me. Her words scared me a bit. But ever the obliging granddaughter, I answered, Thank you, Oma. You know, I'd like a pair of cowboy boots, please. Cowboy boots? Yes, please. She shrugged her shoulders, then nodded. Later that afternoon, after scouring the giant Texas-sized box store, I modeled a perfect pair of caramel-colored boots, tap, tap, tapping on the linoleum floor. We get them, she nodded. I walked to her and she tapped my cheek with her hand. Now you will remember to live a good life. I remembered her voice, her big brown eyes, her cool hand, as I stood in the living room watching the sun set behind the islands. Your Oma died this evening, my dad said. The air went out of my lungs. Oh. Okay. There was a long pause, no words needed to fill. Thanks for telling me. You all right? I'm not sure, I answered. Call tomorrow if you want. Okay, thanks, Dad. We hung up. Everything was quiet, just as it had been sitting next to her watching the pecan leaves. Then, finally, grief knotted in my belly and I crumpled onto the futon. I cried so hard I almost threw up. My Oma, my grandmother of power and dignity, of opinion, judgment, tenacity, gone. After about 20 minutes or so, the tears settled. I should stay in and mourn, I thought. No, I decided. I will go. I want to celebrate life, hers and mine, while I still have it. I rose and walked into the kitchen, my boots tap, tap, tapping. Selecting my favorite glass, I returned to the now completely dark living room. I poured myself a shot. The stars in the sky mirrored the lights of the city along the inky black bay. I raised the glass. To you, Oma. Thank you. I will remember.
Nicely done, Ani. That's beautiful. I really want people to read the whole story. It's a great, great story. Thank you for that.
My pleasure.
Right. Our next reader, Alyson Indrunas. Alyson has published essays in The Listening Eye, the Evansville Review, Big Muddy, a journal of the Mississippi River Valley, Clickers in the Classroom, and Adventures Northwest. The Kind of People Who Leave Dirt on the Floor is an excerpt from her memoir in process, What the Shoulders Can Bear. She lives in Bellingham, Washington, and blogs at spokeandhub.blog. Alyson.
Thank you, everyone. The kind of people who leave dirt on the floor. One day when I was a little girl, no more than 10, riding in the car with my dad on our way to a campground, I told him I wanted to be a hairdresser when I grew up. He cut me off. "No, you don't," he snapped. He turned to look at me while he was driving. I didn't meet his eyes. I looked out the window and felt my soul flying away. "You want to do something with your brain." He sounded serious. "What else do you want to be, kid? Think." I stared at the profile of his angry face. I carried that question for years. It sat on my chest throughout my teenage years. Then it parked itself in my heart as my 20s loomed around the corner. I couldn't think of an answer that felt quite right until the summer that I worked at Yellowstone National Park when I was 19 years old. One day when I walked into the Tourist Welcome Center, I was wearing my park-issued kitchen apron, a sous chef after her shift. I couldn't take my eyes off a group of employees who huddled together near a massive fireplace. I was amazed at all the gear that they had. One man who was impossibly fit with arms as beefy as a football player's walked around taking inventory of sleeping bags, mats, cooking pots, and food. Another woman with equally sculpted arms was counting tents and tent stakes. The others were chatting and joking around with each other while they were packing things into small bags like first aid supplies and trail mix. They seemed excited to be ready to go to work. Who are these people? Where are they going? How do you get this job? I came to learn that they were the trail crew. It never occurred to me that people worked outside in nature all day, nor did I have any idea that people could be happy with the work that they were doing. It was a cosmic boom in the universe for me, getting paid for something that you enjoy. On the day that I saw my first trail crew, it was love at first sight. The trail crew headed into the woods every day and got paid for it. It totally blew my mind. My people. I observed the mud on their boots, their strong arms, their tans. I sighed and thought of the list of jobs on the Yellowstone application, the ones that required a college degree or wilderness first aid training. I didn't check any of those boxes when I applied for the summer job. I stuck to jobs where you had to wear an apron. I took a seat on the government issue couch by the fireplace, and I watched one of the girls use her bandana to wipe the sweat from her hairy armpit, and then she rolled it up and pulled it back into her hair. Genius. This group of people, the trail crew, cracked open a whole new world for me. I watched them put on their packs and file out the door one by one with their eyes on the mountains ahead. I wasn't sure what my dad or the rest of my family would think about me spending the life on the trail, but that I decided right then and there was living. Thank you.
Nice. That's right. That right there is living. Thank you, Alyson. Well done. Love it. Oh, good. Just a reminder for Narrative Project students or former students, we are having an after party on Zoom, and I put the Zoom link in the chat. I'll put it up a couple more times. We want to toast our writers tonight. Our next reader is Colleen Haggerty. Colleen is a writer of memoir and personal essay who has been published in various anthologies. Her memoir, A Leg to Stand On, a finalist for the National Indie Excellence Award, recounts her journey into motherhood as an amputee. An inspirational speaker and coach, Colleen gave a TEDx talk, Forgiving the Unforgivable. Colleen is a writing coach for the Narrative Project. Colleen.
Thank you, Cami. This is from my book of fiction. The chapter is 1941, London. Julia was pulled in many directions. Will, her toddler, was getting into everything. She missed Jimmy, her husband of 4 years, who had been fighting in the war for 3 of them, and she had her ailing mother living a mile away. When her mom had something contagious, Julia left Will with her neighbor Muriel so he wouldn't catch anything, and that's just what she did that.
Looks like Colleen may have frozen. We'll hold on for a second. Hang tight, everybody. Okay, hold tight, everyone. We'll get Claire back up here. Technology does what it does.
Indeed, it does. So, what I would suggest is that we put. Oh, she
Okay.
looks like maybe she's trying to reconnect.
Okay.
So let's give it a beat and
Let's give it a
see.
Give it a beat, and then I will text. Oh, I'm getting this message in. Her computer has crashed. So why don't we?
Oh dear. Should we go to the next reader?
Go to Seán next, and then I'll text
Okay.
Colleen and let her know. We'll bring her in last if she gets situated. Sound good?
All right. Sounds good. Okay. Bye-bye.
Great. All right. Our next reader is Seán Dwyer. Seán Dwyer teaches Spanish at Western Washington University and has published a memoir, A Quest for Tears, Surviving Traumatic Brain Injury, as well as a number of short stories. An advocate for emerging writers, he hosts open mics at a local bookstore, that local bookstore being Village Books. A native of Gary, Indiana, Seán now resides in Bellingham, Washington with his wife, Maureen, his hairless cat, Luna, and his Angora goat, Bob. Unbearably Beautiful is an excerpt from Seán's forthcoming novel, Chocolates on My Pillow.
Thank you. The things you have to do to get moved up in line. Okay. This is an excerpt from the first chapter of Chocolates on the Pillow. Rita worried that this trip might become unbearably beautiful. The trees lining the 2-lane highway still sported small spring green leaves. Her painter friend, Kyle, was keeping her Honda Accord at a steady 58 on the 2-lane highway. New tires sang as they embraced the asphalt and the smooth curves buried among the hills of south central Indiana. In a crate in the back seat, Kyle's rat terrier pup, Madra, was sniffing the breeze blowing through Rita's open window. His mouth hung open, his tongue flicking the odors, his eyes closed against the sun. Kyle mirrored Madra's smile. It was good for him to get out of Bloomington to spend the summer painting in the Southwest. Yes, unbearably beautiful. The pain at leaving Bloomington behind forever. Today was not the day to tell Kyle she was not just visiting her friend Cynthia at her California hospice, but was going to stay and work there until ovarian cancer, at bay but lurking in Rita's belly, killed her. Unbearably beautiful. Kyle merged onto I-70 just east of Terre Haute, joining the disjointed convoy of semis headed toward Illinois. Goodbye, Indiana. She wasn't even sure she would come back when she sold her home. No! Kyle's yell alerted her just before he punched the brakes, flinging her into the shoulder belt. A gold Lexus squeezed into their lane, unaware that its bumper wasn't going to clear theirs. Kyle managed to give it an inch of passing room, risking at the same time contact with the semi on their tail. Rita heard a thump in the back seat and Madra yelped, then began to howl. While Kyle steadied the car, she turned and knelt on the seat. Madra lay on his back, flailing to regain his footing. He caught her eye and gave her a piteous moan. She unhooked the door to the crate and helped Madra stand. He shook himself from head to tail and gave her a grateful lick on the mouth. Psst, Madra, thank you, baby. His yelps gave way to happy whimpers. I'm sorry, buddy, Kyle said. His voice cracked. Daddy didn't hook you up tight enough. I really should have boarded you with my parents. Rita patted him on the shoulder. Hey, I was the one who said you should bring him along. The best thing for him was to be with you. You are right, I'm sure. When I at least think I'm right, I'm tenacious. I'll have to strap him in tighter. Rita shook her head. How about you let him sit with me? I can help steady him if he stop hard. They say dogs become projectiles in the car. I'll connect his harness to my shoulder belt. Kyle pursed his lips and exhaled. Final objection. He'll get heavy. Final reminder. I said to bring him instead of driving him to your parents' house. I have to live with my decisions. When's lunch?
Thank you, Seán.
Thank you.
Nicely done. And Seán looks very authorly tonight as well. Our next reader is Al Clover. At the age of 6, Al Clover stood in front of the grocery store spin rack, and the Mad magazine with the iconic "What, me, worry?" cover enticed him to spend his weekly allowance. Somehow, that led him to writing his first book, just like that, The Comic Book Detective. That's his story, and he's sticking to it. albcover.com. Al.
Hi, everybody. I just got back because I was totally frozen, so bear with me for just a second while I reassess my world. Come on.
We can reassess our world while you're at it.
Nope, I'm right. I'm ready to go.
All right.
Yep. And people are okay. I wish I could say it ended in a hail of gunfire, but I can't because it didn't. Or winning the Dame, as that didn't happen either. My name is Alex Carter, and this is my story. I remembered the noir movie I'd watched last night. I'm often pulled into this world, a noir world. As I rounded the corner to my office, I caught a whiff of cigarette smoke. I saw Wong, the proprietor of Wong's Chinese Food Emporium, as he enjoyed his morning cigarette. Good morning, Alex. Hey, Wong, how's it going? It's good. Wonton soup and fried rice for lunch? We'll see. Got a lot on my plate. All right, you know where I am. Wong sucked the cigarette ash down to the filter, and with a flick of his finger, he exiled the spent butt to the street gutter. I stepped to my office and unlocked the door. As I stood in the doorway, my imagination took over. I didn't see a comic store filled with comic books. The glass cases no longer overflowed with action figures and comic character statues. It faded into an office space. The sales counter where I threw my fedora had turned into a desk. I then crossed to the window and pulled up the shades. It was raining again. The fantasy was in full force now. The noir movie that my imagination sometimes inhabited always started with a dame. As she entered, she swiped her blonde locks out of her eyes and looked around. I'm not one of those guys who wolf whistled at pretty women, but I'm also not one who ignored a good-looking dame. And I didn't ignore her. As she stepped onto the dry floor, her wet shoes squeaked. She smiled at the sound. When people's shoes squeaked, they always looked around with a hint of embarrassment, as they'd hoped no one noticed. Of course we did. You heard that squeak in Seattle a lot. That squeak brought reality crashing back in. Ah, you've set off my early warning system. It lets me know if it's raining outside. Thanks. I appreciate the heads up. Welcome to the Comics Clubhouse. Her voice was quiet. Looking for the owner? Cool, you found me. I'm Alex. Oh, her voice had grown louder. My name is Naomi Price, and I have some comics I was hoping someone could look at. I could do that, I said. Why don't you bring them in tomorrow? There are too many boxes in the comics library to bring in. I leaned forward in excitement. Comics library? You've got my attention. Tell me more. It was my uncle's. He was a comic collector and he passed away last year. Oh, I'm sorry. Uncle? Large collection of comics? How many boxes are we talking? Well, he took all the walls out of the second floor of his house and then put in wall shelving and filled the room with comics. He really loved those comics. I hoped my chin didn't fall too far. Oh, yeah, I guess I could come and look. What have I gotten myself into? Would tonight be too soon, she asked. My name is Alex Carter. I own the Comics Clubhouse.
Nice. Thank you so much, Al. We in the Narrative Project, we love Alex. and the Comics Clubhouse and this sort of noir energy that he brings. Thank you. Well done. Great. Our next reader is Nancy Canyon. Nancy Canyon is the author of Saltwater, a book of poetry, and a novel, Celia's Heaven, which is the winner of Chanticleer Review's Cygnus Award for Paranormal Fiction. With an MFA in creative writing from Pacific Lutheran University, Nancy coaches for the Narrative Project and teaches for Checkout Writers. She lives with her husband in Bellingham, Washington. A Terrible Storm is an excerpt from Nancy Canyon's forthcoming memoir, Struck. Nancy.
Thank you, Cami. A terrible storm. During a lightning storm, it is best to sit in the green chair with the glass insulators cupping each of the legs, either there or on the bed. Just stay out from between two metal objects, such as the Osborne firefinder and the gas stove. Lightning could arc between two metal objects and fry you like chicken. My mother says lightning will come through a broken window. She grew up in the East with frequent thunderstorms rolling through her town. Still, whenever a storm is brewing, she runs around the house closing up all the windows. I think she passed the behavior on to me. I'm pretty nervous about the storm I see building over Camas Prairie. Huge cumulonimbus blooming like giant mushroom clouds. Lightning flashes from cloud to cloud and occasionally cloud to ground. We wander around the tower, feeling uneasy, as if we're waiting for the bad thing to happen. We don't know whether to eat or read or twiddle our thumbs while we wait for the tempest to arrive. I pace the room, my gaze falling upon a cracked window pane. I pointed out to Jack. Lightning could come through that crack. Better call Arizona and tell him. Go ahead. He faces the pane and the prairie beyond, pulling out his mustache, sticking hairs in his mouth and chewing. A large lightning bolt brightens the sky over Grangeville. Please? Finally, Jack picks up the radio handset and calls the district. Arizona laughs when he learns of the problem. Sit on the bed, he says, away from the broken pane. That's just it, Jack says. It's next to the bed. When we pick up trash next week, we'll fix it. In the meantime, tape it up. Anything else? Nope, Jack says, looking sheepish. Then enjoy the storm, over and out. Hissing, Jack hangs up the receiver. Clouds blot out the sky, bringing dusk early. Virgo blurs the prairie. Multiple bolts, jagged and bright, sear the view. One after another, a flurry of strikes, too many to count and certainly too many to record in the strike log. I pull the log out from beneath a stack of papers anyway. I carry it with me to the bed, feeling as if I'm walking to the gallows. Jack climbs onto the bed next to me and leans close. It'll be all right, Nancerella. I know, I say. It's just that it's moving so fast. A transformer blows on the prairie. An explosion of bright, sparking light illuminating the darkness. Then another transformer. Then what appears to be a ball of lightning lifts off the ground, high into the air, hovering there momentarily, then settling back again. Did you see that? Yep, ball lightning, a natural phenomenon. I've seen it before. Great, I laugh. And we have a cracked window pane. Darkness falls, the prairie disappearing completely. Zigzags of searing light blind us. The storm marches steadily toward us, throwing out one jagged bolt after another. Feeling nauseous, I lean close to Jack for protection. I know this will be the most dangerous storm we've experienced so far on Corral Hill.
Oh, thank you, Nancy. I remember I was really anxious the first time I read that story, wondering what was going to happen. So people will just have to buy the book with the link to the book. I know. Thank you so much. Well done. That's great. Our next reader is August Cabrerra. August, a surviving military spouse, recently moved to North Carolina with her 2 boys and their neurotic Sheltie. Currently working on her first book about her relationship with her husband before and after his death, she is enjoying the challenge and adventure of finally following her dream of being a writer when she grows up. August.
Arlington National Cemetery is unnaturally beautiful. The clear blue sky, the bright green grass, the stark white stones, all balanced that early morning against a perfectly selected demure sleeveless Calvin Klein black dress. When I arrived to Arlington, I was overwhelmed by the size of the group that had already gathered. A dark feeling floated among those who felt led to come to pay their final respects. But there were also hellos and hugs shared between people who hadn't seen each other in months or even years. Friends intermingled with family who introduced themselves to the obvious military connections in full dress uniform. During an interlude in the pre-event chaos, my escorting general offered a moment of quiet in a memorial building. He walked me in and patiently waited while I checked my hair and makeup one last time in the bathroom mirror. I had spent weeks finding the perfect dress, flattering and purchased, but not sexy as hell. I tried on a dozen pair of shoes, looking for heels high enough to match the dress, but comfortable enough to wear all day. I shopped for the right sunglasses that would not overpower my small face, but still give me a bit of privacy under the slightly oversized lenses. I knew I had a part to play, and I was a willing participant in making it look as perfect as possible. Was this shallow? Yes, absolutely. But my appearance gave me something to control in the midst of the formulaic and very tightly scripted ceremony. I looked at my reflection in the mirror one last time, took in what felt like my last private breath of the day, and walked back out to the waiting general. At exactly the agreed upon moment, the procession began. I took the general's waiting arm, and we began the slow walk behind the caisson platoon with what felt like 200 people behind me. My boys on one side, the general on the other. And then the sound started. Swoosh, click, swoosh, click, swoosh, click. I was doing my level best to channel my inner trophy widow for this high-profile dog and pony show, and I somehow ended up with a pair of shoes that did this strange swooshy squeaky sound with every step of my right foot. Really, what would the general think? Who else could hear my faux pas? I was embarrassed, ashamed, feeling like a fraud. I was supposed to hold it all together. That was my one and only job, hold it all together. And I messed the entire thing up with these stupid black leather peep-toed Clark's heels. Every step behind the platoon, every step closer to section 60, every step toward the final moment I would see what was left of my husband in his tasteful mahogany urn. Every step, my stupid shoes reminded me of what a failure I was at this whole widow thing. I didn't smell the freshly cut grass. I didn't feel the small hands in mine. I didn't hear the sound of Dave's wedding ring worn on a chain around my neck as it made a dull thud against my chest with each step. I just worried about my shoes.
Oh, nicely done, August. Wow. And what a good reading, too. Beautiful. Thank you. Appreciate it. Well, we're going to go back to Colleen, bring her back in, and see if her computer is going to behave itself. And while we're bringing Colleen up, just a reminder to our narrative project peeps that we're going to have an after party, have a toast together, even though we can't be together. And I'm going to pop the Zoom link, and alumni are welcome to come high five each other. Welcome back, Colleen.
Thank you. Let's see if it works. I hope I don't crash again.
That's all right. Give it a try.
Okay. London, 1941. Julia was pulled in many directions. Will, her toddler, was getting into everything. She missed Jimmy, her husband of 4 years, who had been fighting in the war for 3 of them. And she had her ailing mother living a mile away. When her mom had something contagious, Julia left Will with her neighbor, Muriel, so he wouldn't catch anything. And that's just what she did that night. Julia heard her mom snoring when she arrived, so she headed straight for the kitchen and made dinner. When ready, Julia brought it to her mother, who was now awake, and helped her eat. Her mom fell asleep after dinner, so Julia walked to the living room window.
And it pauses right about the same spot. So really and truly, this is our ploy to get you to buy the book, because you're not going to get to hear Colleen's reading unless you do.
Oh,
We'll wait for just a second and see if she texts, and then if she doesn't.
What can we do? She, if she has an iPhone, she can do this from her iPhone.
She's giving us that I can't effing believe it on my text. That's fantastic. Well, do you have a number for her to call in, and we can do the questions, and then we can give it one more try, or she may decide to give up the ghost on this one. So, all right.
Yeah, if she wants to try to log back in to the same link on her iPhone, her iPhone won't crash, or her phone.
Okay.
Doesn't have to be an iPhone.
Okay. We'll do that. And meanwhile, why don't we bring up Ani and Lisa for questions?
All right.
I'm popping up the link here for link to after party. So there it is. For Narrative Project peeps, we're going to toast this our authors who are. Hi, Ani.
Hi, Cami.
I'm just typing in that she can try the link on the phone.
Sure thing. Folks, while Cami's texting, go ahead and pop any questions that you have into the little Ask a Question button down over there for me. Hi, Lisa. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good.
That was great.
Yeah. Good job, everybody.
Really good job, everyone. And what we would love to do is just to answer any questions that you have. And also, we're just going to talk amongst ourselves a little bit about a couple of things. And I've got that off to Colleen. Great. So thank you all for joining us. Those of you who are in the audience, we really, really appreciate you coming and celebrating. I see family members of our readers, and it's a really, really big deal, to publish in an anthology, to see your name in print the first time ever. Do you guys remember that, Lisa and Ani? What was that like?
Oh, it was thrilling. Just like it confirmed something for me of like, all right, like I'm doing this and it's for real and I'm on a real path.
Yeah, really. And we want to just give a shout out to Lisa. Lisa is the publisher at Sidekick Press. And behind her head, you can see the pictures of all of the books that she's published so far. She's adding to that collage as time goes on. And she still has a few spots open for 2021 for books that she can publish. She has a limited capacity, but she has a few spots left. And thank you for this gorgeous cover. And a beautiful interior. We really appreciate all of the work that you did for us and with us. And Lisa, as a member of the Narrative Project, she also has a piece in this book. So
I just didn't read it tonight, but it's a piece from my memoir, which is coming up in a couple of months. So
really excited about that. So we have a couple of questions here. The first question comes from Maureen Kane. She asks, can I get that guy Seán's phone number? I really like the way he dresses. That would be Seán's wife. I have his number for you if you need it, Maureen. And then we have a question from Jess Stone. When will the full books be published? She says that she has about 10 new books on her list to buy. And yeah, so that's a great question. So everyone who comes into the Narrative Project is working on their full book. And some people come in and they have an idea and they work through their first draft. Some people come in with a big chunk of writing and they work through a revision. So we have a number of people who've completed, from the 50 who've been through the program, who've completed their full books, and others who are in the process and getting very, very close. So stay tuned. Whenever somebody publishes, we make a big deal. There's Seán's, A Quest for Tears. There is Nancy Canyon's, Celia's Heaven. And there is Rebecca's, Dancing Between Bamboo Poles. And, Wendy Welch has a new book out. Wendy, pop the name of it in the chat. It's about the coronavirus. So we are just so proud of our writers. They stay really committed.
And there's more than just those 3. I just don't have everybody's yet.
Those are just the ones that you had handy.
Yep.
Cool. Any other questions, people? If you want to pop them in the question box, we'll answer a couple of other questions if you have any. Did you notice any in the chat, or was it mostly good cheers and applauds?
Yep. Just as rowdy as we always are, just through writing, which makes sense because we're writers.
Right. That's great. COVID-19 conspiracy theories. That's Wendy's new book. So that sounds exciting and interesting because there are a lot of them, right? Fantastic. Good. Well, anything final that you want to say, Lisa or Ani, about our book launch and our authors who have come into their own, who started out as writers and are now authors?
I'm just so excited to be a part of the whole thing. I love reading those stories, and I cannot wait until the full books come out too. And hopefully we'll be a part of some of those journeys as well. It's really exciting.
Yeah, that's great.
I just feel really proud and privileged to work with such wonderful writers and to play with stories and get to talk about stories and craft. I have the best job in the world.
Yeah.
And just a big thanks to Claire for coordinating with us. And thanks to everybody for coming and trying it out, see how these things work online. So
yeah, absolutely. A huge thanks to Claire. Claire, if you're there, if you can bring yourself back up to the screen so we can see your gorgeous mug. There she is.
I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, we seriously just want to say thank you so much to Village Books. I mean, Village Books in Bellingham, Washington, is hosting us tonight, and we have authors here from all around the country and Canada, and so this is really an international group of people, and Village Books has supported all of us in one way, shape, or form, either directly or because they support a lot of our coaches and writers who come from the Northwest. So huge thanks to you, Claire, and everybody at Village Books. And a reminder once again for everyone to buy their books from their independently owned bookstores. It's really important right now because they are trying to stay afloat in a difficult time, and we depend on them. They are like centers of our community. So we just want to really remember to make the extra effort to go to the website of the bookstore that you love and type in your book title there instead of other big name places which shall not be named here. So thank you.
I encourage people to try, sadly, so many people actually don't have indie bookstores close to them anymore. So I also encourage people to use indiebound.org because that can help you find you can put the title in and it can help you find a bookstore nearest you where you can maybe get the book. So we love IndieBound.
Great. IndieBound. Fantastic. Well, thank you everyone for
Cami,
yes.
wait. I
Yes.
have something else I want to say.
Okay.
A big shout out to the coaches
Indeed.
who've worked one-on-one with all of the writers and who helped to edit this anthology. We wouldn't be anywhere without the coaches. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And we really had all of our coaches helped to edit this particular volume. And our coaches those of you who are in the program, they hold your hand, they hold you when you cry, they tap their foot when you're running late on getting your material in. It takes a village. It takes a whole village to get a book done. It's not something that you do alone. And we are so grateful to have our coaches as pillars in our village. So absolutely. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Everyone who's been here to support the readers and the readers themselves. And Colleen, we're sorry that you crashed a couple times, but you did leave us in suspense. So everybody go ahead and purchase the book with the button below. And we'll see some of you at the after party. Lots of love, everyone.
And I do want to say that all of these events are recorded and they're on our YouTube channel. So if you want to share it, if you want to see past events that we've had with all these fabulous people, I'm going to put there's our kind of an ugly YouTube link, but that takes you to our channel where you can find so many of our past events, and you can watch them over and over and over again and share them with your friends. So thank you all so much.
Awesome. Lisa, you had a thing?
Nope.
No, okay, we're good. Okay, everybody. We'll see you later.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for being here today.
Cheers. Thanks.
Okay. Over and out.
Over